We are back for Small Business Hour, episode 5. Tim is traveling out to the great state of Oregon to visit one of our clients this week. So he's probably actually in a boardroom chatting it up with them as we speak. So Ben and I instead are going to have fun and do the Small Business Hour this go around. Ben, what you got up in the corner on the whiteboard there?
Oh, nothing. Whoop, wrong side. Yeah, just a score from last week.
Just wanted to call it
It
out.
looks like UVA won. Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
Beat
shocker.
a top 10 team on the road. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
That
cool.
is pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a good win. My Oklahoma State Cowboys had a big win in Morgantown against West Virginia as well. So
Mhm.
pretty good week on the college sports fronts for us. NBA started last night, and my Thunder beat Ben's Bulls. So also a pretty good kickstart to the NBA season, at least from this side of the conversation.
Probably will kick the Bulls in the butt to get them moving. So
Yeah.
probably not the worst thing to happen.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so today we are going to go with the format of we each brought one article. We don't know what the other one has. We're going to talk about that as it relates to small businesses and what's going on out there. And then, as usual, we're going to have a little bit of fun at the end of the episode. So today we're going to be doing college football picks again. It's Thursday, October 26th, 2023. So we are getting ready for the weekend of college football. We are going to be picking the top 10 team we believe is most likely to lose, our non-power 5 pick of the week, and then our 3-team parlay for the week. So, Ben, why don't you start us off the serious business first? What do you got for us from an article perspective? What do small business leaders need to know?
So I've got, so I overachieved. I actually have 3 articles. 2 of them I'm going to run through very quickly because
We
there's not
said
really a
one,
discussion
and he
point.
has 3. That's good.
Yeah, well, two of them are very similar, and they're just some notes for a particular sect of small business owners. So the two are they basically say the same thing, but for a different group. So I guess yesterday a lot of small business loan data came out for the past couple of years, and there was 2 articles. One that was Biden-Harris administration boosts lending to Latino-owned small businesses. And basically, the headline is that since 2020, the number of loans granted to Latina owned small businesses has doubled from 2020 to 2023. That in 2020 it was only 7.8% of total loans. Now it's 12.2% of total loans go to Latino or Latina owned businesses. So the other article is the same information, not the same information, but similar, but to women-owned small businesses, so that it's increased from $3 billion to $5 billion from 2020 to 2023. So a 69% increase in SBA loan volume to female entrepreneurs. So all that to say is if you are a small business owner from potentially historically underrepresented sect of society, and you feel like maybe you could use a small business loan, and you don't feel like you would have a shot in the past. Things are changing, and maybe you have the opportunity now. I don't think there's too much to discuss there, other than that's great news for minority and female owners of small businesses. So that's just a quick little update. I guess there might be a few more data points that come out if people are looking for them, but those were just the high ones I saw. The one to actually talk about. So this is from benefitspro.com. And the title, Small Businesses Are Hiring, but Can They Afford to Keep New Employees? And this actually dropped 5 hours ago. So very relevant to right now. And basically, the study says that small companies looked to add jobs, large businesses lost jobs, and that the main driver of issues with hiring and retaining employees was a demand for higher salaries. That salaries have not been increasing, and they are not, and basically employees are feeling that they are working harder. The article also talks about how small businesses are trying to upscale skill employees, man, I can't talk, but employees don't feel like they're getting paid. Uh, Classic economics problem. So I guess my question is for you, Kade, for the group. What do you think is going to happen? What's going to give to create an equilibrium here? Do you think it's going to be a situation where wages have to rise, and that just has to be something that small business owners have to account for, or is this going to be a situation where maybe people have to temper their expectations on salaries?
Um, to speak to Ben's point, I think one of the things that I would be interesting in understanding is how many people have moved to like independent contracting, self-employment, the gig economy type stuff. Because one thing that I think is true that hurts the corporate employees or the corporate employers who traditionally would just give you your 3% a year raise and call it good and do everything they could not to give you larger raises, even though you took on more responsibility. The thing that hurts them is that there's never been more opportunities to kind of branch out on your own and make better money. And you don't have to start a business necessarily, although you're kind of starting it, but you can get contracts through Upwork, right? You can be a contractor. You can do things. There's a lot of different ways that haven't existed in the past to take part in the quote unquote gig economy, especially for younger people, I think, and who are used to it more than maybe an older generation is. And so to me, that's the question that I would have, because I think, I think eventually larger companies are going to have to do better with how they pay their employees if they want to keep them, because it's more pleasant to work at a smaller business. It's more pleasant to set your own schedule. It's more pleasant to be your own boss. So if you can make more money and the benefits of the security and the things that you used to get from a corporate employee don't outweigh the benefits of either working at a smaller employer or doing your own thing, then less people are going to do it. And so to counteract that, I think that eventually larger businesses are going to have to raise their wages. But I think we may just be seeing a reemergence of small businesses altogether to some extent. A reemergence is probably a bad word because they never went anywhere. But COVID was really damaging to a lot of them, and a lot of them closed. A lot of them struggled. A lot of them found themselves in a tight spot during COVID. And I think now, as we get through that, and working remote has become embraced more, and all of these different things are happening, I think companies are opening up to more options. There are more options available to employees, and I think there's just a lot more opportunity than there has been in a long time. And that means that you can make more money, which means that if the big companies want to keep you, they have to pay you more. And I think to some extent, and I don't know if this is anecdotal, I don't know if it's true, but I think some people get turned off by big companies. We work with big companies all the time, and it seems like you can't get good service from large companies anymore. You can't get good expertise. You have these behemoths that have acquired 47 different companies, and nobody that works for them even knows all of the different components or services or products that they have under their umbrella. And it's really difficult to get help. It's really difficult to get a lot of the things that you're looking for from those companies, especially in like the IT or the services industry. And so it can make it really challenging. And so that shifts consumers a little bit to more smaller businesses, right? If they can find good people that they can trust and they know will help them, then they shift to preferring to work with smaller businesses. And then if that shift happens, then there's more opportunities in smaller businesses. And that's naturally going to draw even more away from larger businesses. So I think bigger businesses need to work harder at wages and pay more, but they also need to focus really on the service, like how they truly serve their customer. Smaller businesses need to lean in to the competitive advantages they have against larger businesses, which is more flexibility, more time, better work-life balance potentially, right? Like to customers, that they're going to provide better service, face-to-face service to their customers, that type of thing. So I don't know how it's going to break. I prefer smaller businesses over larger ones, obviously, but I think it's an interesting trend, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
I'll be honest, I don't know that I can add much to what you just said. The only thing, when I think about the equilibrium of, what's standard wages and what's, going to be the 50 percentile, obviously macroeconomic trends are going to be something to consider. If we have another COVID, if we have a huge outbreak or something like that, then yeah, there's going to be challenges for small businesses. And people may have to go towards large businesses in the environment. That said, I really agree with what you said about there being more opportunities now. You look at, like you mentioned, Upwork, looking at creating courses online, creating there's I've seen things like buying cars and renting them on rental sites. There's other ways of doing business nowadays that there've never been before, and I think that flexibility in the long run, assuming macroeconomic trends stay relatively a little bit pushes this way, a little bit pushes that way, will allow smaller businesses and give a little bit of a edge to the employee over the employer in those large businesses. But no, I don't know that I can add anything to what you said. So
That's generally how I like to leave it. Nothing
yeah,
left to be said. I covered it all. Yeah.
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 I promise that's not just a cop out,
uh,
because that's
no,
more or less what I was thinking as well.
yeah, no, I think that's good. Okay. So I think is it my article?
It's your
My
article.
turn.
Yep.
All right, my article. So for my article, I have something that I think is interesting, and this is small businesses, but a little bit different. Startups who are seeking VC funding, and so um, this is an article, and one of the things that it talks about, it is from CB Insights, which is a newsletter that I get regularly. It's very good, but one of the things that it talks about here is um, there's a decrease in venture capital funding for healthcare startups, and it's down to levels not seen since 7 years ago. And that to me is interesting because there was a huge influx in the COVID environment of dollars, private equity and venture capital available to startups in the healthcare space. And now it peaked back in 2021, and now has steeply declined, much steeper than the rest of the VC landscape. And it's becoming more challenging to find funding if you are a startup in the healthcare space. I think that's interesting for a couple things. So one, we have a client who's a VC startup in the healthcare space, right? So there are things like that that are interesting to us, and just seeing what those trends are and how that impacts a company's ability to grow. Obviously, VC-backed startups are dependent on being able to have future rounds to continue to grow their business the way that they project to, and so it's pretty critical as far as finding success within the businesses. So I think there's two observations that I would make, and then I want Ben's thoughts. So one, strike while the iron's hot if you're a VC, but make sure you have a business model that actually proves itself out, right? Like there is still VC money in the healthcare startup space, but they're going to be much more discerning on how they distribute those funds. So if you have a really solid idea, a really solid product, a really solid business model, you're probably going to be fine. But if you took advantage of the trends and got VC money when everyone in the healthcare space that was trying to start something could get VC money a few years ago, and you haven't proved a sustainable business model, you're probably in trouble now because there's less money to go around. So strike while the iron's hot when you need to raise money, but don't strike if you don't have a reliable business model. The other thing that I think through is that means that like VCs don't just stop investing, right? So they've reallocated funds to other areas. What's hot right now? Navigation technology and AI. Those are two of the hottest areas, according to this article from CB Insights right now in the VC space. AI is hot. Again, going back to striking while the iron's hot in that space. ChatGPT and everything happening around that have caused this rush on artificial intelligence that everyone thinks like we are on the verge of the AI revolution, and we might be, right? But anything that throws AI in their name right now is raising money. So if you're in that space, that's great, cool, raise money, strike while the iron's hot, but make sure that you have a solid product and a path to a very reliable business model, because in a few years, something else is going to be the hot trend, and you need to have built a sustainable business that can attract investors when it's not the hot ticket on the marketplace. So those are kind of my initial thoughts from going through that article. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I again tend to agree with what you said about,
Just because I say
um,
smart things.
yeah. Sometimes. No, when you were talking, the first thing I thought of was some of the older viewers watching may remember the .com burst, the bubble burst, and I think it's there's a lot of parallels there, especially when you look at COVID, 2020, 2021, 2022, even. A lot of startups, a lot of people trying to be Moderna. Right, Moderna was a big success story throughout those time periods. The stock uh, went way up. But what happened, what seems to have happened based on the article you're telling me, and what happened with the .com burst around 2001, 2002, is you have all these companies, and then all of a sudden people are like, hey, we don't really need all this anymore. We don't need all these websites that do very similar things. And then funding stops, and site traffic and excitement drops. And then all of a sudden, like you said, if you don't have a business model that actually makes money, you're not going to get funding. You're not going to get support. And that's what happened in the .com bubble burst. And I think that's what's happening now, is that people are saying, if you don't actually have a way to make profit, not just revenue, but profit, um, you know, I need to start seeing the real returns on my investment here. I can't just be investing in a growth stock, or a growth company, I should say. Again, if I can turn anything to stock market analysis, I will. So that's kind of how I look at it. And yeah, we could argue that the AI, um, call it a revolution, some people might, could be in the same boat. If we have all these different tools of AI that do exactly the same thing, and whoever is going to be able to actually make money off of it and turn a profit off of it are going to be the ones that stay, and all the others are just going to fall by the wayside. I think about ChatGPT versus Bard versus all the other AI systems that are out there. They'll basically do the same thing. Everyone says, "Oh, ours is better. Ours is better." Who's actually making money off of it? And whoever that is, I think, in a capitalistic society, is going to be the one that persists, and everyone else will fall by the wayside. I know I'm going a little bit off of the
No, I
focus of the
think it's
article, but
good, because I think that's like something that people need to think about. And this is whether you're raising money or not. There are a lot of ways to get funding for a business, right? Fund it yourself, um, VC, private equity money, family and friends. Um, take there's take a loan if you can get an SBA loan. We talked about those earlier, right? If you got a solid business plan, even if you've never started a business before, you can. And even if you haven't started your business yet and it has no revenue, you can sometimes get um, like an SBA loan to help start it if you have a solid plan, right? And there's a lot of ways to get funding, and it takes money to start a business. It takes money to run a business. It takes money to build a business. So that's what you have to do. But with that being said, you got to have a path to profitability. And again, like Ben said, not just revenue. Twitter was not profitable for like ever. I don't think it was ever profitable before Elon bought it, if I'm being honest. I don't even know if it's profitable now. I don't really know if that's even
I don't know.
public. It's not public anymore, so I don't know
No,
if it matters.
yeah,
So but I don't think it ever was profitable before Elon bought it. And it just survived off of pure popularity. So it got money, it got funding money because of the level of popularity, but it took literally hundreds of millions of users to get to that level. Not very many people can do that. Not very many companies can do that, right? Your average company, if you don't have a path to profitability, within a few years, or at least significant progress towards profitability that shows a clear roadmap to profitability at some determined point in the future, like at some point the well will run dry, and you've got to be able to make sure that if you're building something, there is a pathway to profitability. There'll be wrenches thrown in along the way. There'll be bumps. There'll be negative months where it goes down, and then you got to get it back up, right? But you got to have a path. You got to have a roadmap that, like, this is how we get profitable, and this is a realistic, feasible outcome. And if we can get to there, then we'll start to have profitable growth. But if you don't have that, then it's going to be a challenge. And if you're just adding revenue, but the cost for every dollar of revenue that you add is $1, then you're never going to make it either, right? Like, you can't just focus on revenue. You've got to be able to understand. You've got to be able to understand just the basic concepts of how to grow profitably. What are your fixed costs? What are your marginal costs that are going to go up, and be able to make that plan. So I'm ranting a little bit, but I think it speaks to like a broader thing, because a lot of companies grow in revenue, but not profitability, even if they're already profitable, right? But they don't get more profitable as they grow. It's like they're profitable and then they just add revenue, but they're not really growing more profitable. And they might be fine if they're already profitable, but are adding more revenue. That's break even. But you're not optimizing your business if you're not always striving for more profitability. And that doesn't mean cost cutting all the time, right? Don't get me wrong there. Like, that means investing in stuff that long-term makes you more profitable. Sometimes that means spending more money right now, not just focusing on shrinking your costs, but like making strategic investments that allow you to scale more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah. I know sometimes when we talk with companies about like PMO implementations, project management offices, you have to select the right projects that are going to be right for your business right now.
Yeah.
If you're a company that has a lot of cash right now, maybe you can make those long-term investments that won't pay off for 3, 4, or 5 years. But if you're cash, poor right now, then you got to make those small incremental investments that maybe have a 10% ROI, even though you had an opportunity to make 40, 50% ROI. So yeah, you just got to be very strategic about how you make decisions, and make sure that that profitability is measured and managed throughout your organization.
And everything, like when you get to a certain size, and it's not big, it's like a few, 5, 6, 7 employees, $1 million, $2 million in revenue. But once you have a little bit of money and you've got a few employees, you start getting competing priorities as far as where you invest that money, right? Salespeople want a new CRM. The ops people want a new ERP or an ERP to start with, right? Like the CEO wants X, the CFO wants Y. And at the end of the day, regardless of size, when you're talking about organizational initiatives and how you invest your resources, which is not just money, but also capacity of your employees. When you think about how you invest those resources, you should be making that decision based off of what has the largest and most valuable return for the business. What is the most valuable thing to the business? Not who has my ear today to convince me to do their thing, not who has the most political capital with me, or who do I like better, or who's been around longer. Like, what pure business case, which of these initiatives is most effective for our business? That's priority number one. And it cost X and it needs X resources. So now we allocate those. We have this much left. So what's next? Okay, this is number two. Like, that's how you should be prioritizing the things that you're going to do as a business. And if you don't have a process for discussing and doing that in a strategic manner, then you're not always going to be efficiently distributing your resources.
Totally agreed.
So, okay, time for the fun part. College football picks. We're going to start with top 10 team most likely to lose. Ben.
You want me to go first?
I do.
You're going to like my pick. I can tell you now.
So
I was looking at the... What?
No, go ahead. I was going to guess, but I want you to say it.
Yeah, you probably know what it is based on that. So I was looking at these games, and I basically narrowed it down. So for those who don't know, 10 top 10 teams, obviously. Two of them have a bye this week. I think that's Alabama and Michigan are the two that are off this week. So 8 games. I narrowed it down to 5 that I considered: Oklahoma, Kansas, BYU, Texas, Oregon, Utah, Georgia, Florida, and Ohio State, Wisconsin. The others, I think, were too much of a reach. Um, BYU Texas is basically, I thought maybe, but BYU is not good away from home, so I took that one out. Ohio State, Wisconsin, I think Ohio State's the number one team in the country, so I just on
Okay.
principle am going to go away from that one.
Okay.
And then Oregon, Utah, to me, and apologize if this was your pick, I think that's the easy pick.
Yeah.
So I just didn't pick that on principle.
So for record, I actually picked 2 for that same reason. Because my
Okay.
answer, the pure answer for most likely to lose, I think, is Oregon because they play the best team on the
Yeah.
road, right? But I also picked a secondary one because that seemed like the cop out answer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I would also think that Oregon has a good chance to lose as well. But I was a little bit torn between Oklahoma, Kansas, and Georgia, Florida. Ultimately, I think Georgia, Florida is more of a stretch. So I'm actually going to go with Oklahoma at Kansas
I do like your
as
pick. I
my,
knew what it was when you said that.
yeah.
Um, Although I will say Bedlam is next week, and I'm not 100% sure. I always like to see OU lose, but I'm not 100% sure that I want them to lose right before Bedlam. I don't know what they have a pretty good record coming off a loss historically. And so, like,
I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
I probably still want them to lose, if I'm being honest. But if it hurts our chances to beat them, then I want them to win. But that almost pains me to say it. Um, but yeah, all right. OU versus Kansas is Ben's pick.
Yeah.
Picking the Jayhawks as the most likely to upset a top 10 team. Well, Kansas and Florida are the two that Florida might still be ranked. I'm not sure, but Kansas was ranked last week or 2 weeks ago when we played them anyway. So it's not a stretch. They are certainly good enough, and it's in Lawrence, I believe. So
Yeah.
I think that's a decent opportunity. So I picked the other game that you talked about again because Oregon at Utah is kind of a cop out because that's the Utah's really good and they're on the verge of being a top 10 team themselves. I think they're like 12 and it's on the road. So I picked Florida beating Georgia. And there's a couple of things that went into this. I don't know what to make of Georgia, to be honest. I really don't. Like, I don't know if Georgia, don't get me wrong. I think Georgia is one of the best teams in the country, regardless of what I make of them. But are they the, like, heavyweight juggernaut of the last couple of years that is just sleepily walking through all these teams that they can easily handle? And once they play good teams, will turn it on and absolutely demolish them? Maybe. I think there was a little bit of sign of that against like Kentucky a couple weeks ago that potentially they're that good. Or are they a really good team but not nearly to the level that they've been the last couple of years and therefore beatable? Florida has shown some signs of being pretty decent, especially the game against Tennessee. And I still don't think Florida wins. But if you ask me what the most likely one besides Utah Oregon is, I think the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, neutral site rivalry game. Georgia's got the better of them for a while. Florida's shown some life recently. Georgia has seemed as though they're sleepwalking at times this year. If they try to do that, Florida is good enough to make them pay for it. Still think Georgia wins the game, but I think it'll be a close game, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Florida upset them.
Yeah, obviously, I think that's a good pick. I didn't even see that the money line was plus 500 on Florida. I mean, I think that's a pretty big number. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a what would that imply, a 16% chance of winning. Um, I think that's a little bit too much.
Well, I think part of it is just like, I think part of it is Georgia the last 2 years moves the
Yeah,
line a lot.
Right.
Like it's a lot. Like 4 of those points are attributed to the last 2 years of Georgia and not this year's Georgia team. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I think that's part of it. Now, could this team be that same team potentially? But I don't know that they've done much yet to show that they're the same team. They have a pretty weak schedule, um, and Kentucky was the first. They did stomp Kentucky, and I think Kentucky was undefeated going into that game, and that was the first real test that they haven't played Missouri yet, have they? I
No,
don't think they've played Missouri
Missouri's
yet. Missouri's pretty good.
next week.
Yeah, see, that's a game that I'm looking forward to watching. Missouri's pretty good. That'll
They
be
went
kind of a litmus test of what's going on there.
they went to Auburn and won. That's a pretty solid win. Not an amazing win, but a decent win.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. You want to keep going with your non-Power
All
Five pick of
right.
the week?
My non-power 5 pick of the week, going to my home state of Wyoming. I have the Cowboys +5 against Boise State. Um, Wyoming has been really pretty good this year. For a while, they had only lost to Texas in Austin. They had the upset over Texas Tech. They had a big win against Appalachian State. They dropped a game last week or the week before. I forget when they lost, but still having a really solid year for Wyoming standards. Boise State, not bad, but has been not up to the Boise State of old levels for the last couple of years. And I really think that Wyoming has a good chance not only to cover the 5 points, but definitely to potentially win the game. My pick, I just picked them +5, not on the money line, but I do think they have a good chance to win the game as well. And I will be rooting for them.
I'm not going to pretend to know anything about that game or Wyoming football, so good pick.
All right. That's fair.
Yeah, I peek behind the curtains. I picked the 3 things that we were going to pick this week, and I'm now regretting this one because I realize no matter what Cade picks, there's a very low chance I'll be able to comment anything on it. But yeah, is what it is. All right, and I don't know if you're going to be able to comment on this one. So I was looking through the options, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to get a rivalry game in here? Well, I assume it's a rivalry game. I'm not super well versed in the rivalries of Ohio, but I am taking Miami of Ohio plus what are they plus 7.5 over Ohio University, not Ohio State, Ohio University. Um, I was looking at these 2 teams on Pro Football Focus. I don't watch. I don't even know what conference they're in. That's really bad, but I
The
don't.
MAC.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's the MAC, but um, and I was just looking and seeing, how are they ranked offensively, defensively as a whole? How are their passing offenses, rushing offenses, and they look like the same team. They look like that they were very similar teams in terms of makeup. Um, and overall, I just look at that line of 7.5. If it was 6.5, I might feel a little bit differently. 7.5, where you get a full touchdown and you still win, if that's the ends up being the difference. I think it's in a rivalry game where the fan base is probably going to be neutral. That's
Yeah.
there, or as close to neutral as you can get. I think home field advantage is going to be significantly diminished. Um, I see Miami has lost 2 games. One last week in a close one. I think that's against Toledo, and then week 1 at Miami. Meanwhile, Ohio is kind of been back and forth.
Ohio's
Um,
got the win over Iowa State, though. Iowa
it does
State
have a win over
tied.
Iowa State
Yeah,
a
tied
month and a
for
half
second
ago.
place in the Big 12, Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I honestly missed that one, but
Yeah.
looking also at the line of this guy, it lines below 40, so they're expecting a low scoring game. If you can get a touchdown and change on a low scoring game where the 2 teams are very hard to differentiate, I take the
Yeah.
underdog. So that's my
So
pick for the week.
I think that's a good pick because I was just looking up a couple things. I know a little bit about them, but not a ton. One thing I like to look at in addition to Pro Football Focus, which I use Ben's account credentials for that, but is ESPN's matchup predictor. I don't know exactly what's on the back end, but it always gives me kind of like a good. I think it's FPI, which I don't love, but I think it's okay. And um, it projects Miami of having a 53.2% chance to win. And that's win. That's not against the spread, right? And so,
Right.
so basically, it's saying that it's pretty even split game, but then they're 7.5 point underdogs. So, like, if you've got a 50-50 game that has a 7 point line, then I think you always take the underdog in that scenario,
Yep.
or especially at 7.5. Like you said, if it's 6.5 and a touchdown covers, then maybe that's different. I barely snuck by on my Ole Miss over Auburn pick last week with the touchdown win. But yeah, I think that's a great pick because I think that line is probably just too big given the
Yep.
circumstances.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about how we did last week. For those
Oh
who
yeah,
who
let's
watched
recap.
last week, I don't have it up handy, but basically, Cade actually did well. I think what were you go 4-5-1, 4-2,
5-1. No, I only
five
missed
and one.
one. The only thing I
Yep.
missed was Penn State beating
Yeah,
Ohio State,
in your parlay, but
which
you were going aggressive in that guy.
I was. Yeah, it was a money
Um,
line parlay. So
I went. What I go one or no 2-3, 2-4, one or the other. The one thing I missed was FSU's comeback against Duke. Duke was up 2017. I had them plus 14 and a half
yeah.
with
And
starting
then
the fourth
yeah,
quarter.
that was a bad
And
beat. Fourth quarter of
yeah,
that game was tough for
yeah,
any Duke bettors out there.
right. So thankfully I didn't put too much money on it. So, all right. 3-leg parlay. You want me to go first
Go
since you went
ahead.
first last time? All right.
Yep.
I didn't mean to do this, but once I had picked two of this, I decided why not pick a third and make it an all ACC parlay. Um, so I am going to start with probably the obvious one, if you know me, and that is going to be my Who's at plus, what was it, plus 18 and a half against Miami. Um,
Oh, you got a lot of confidence now coming off of that
yeah,
win.
a lot of confidence. No, it's at Miami, which I don't love, but what I do like is that we do have a lot of confidence, and I think we come out strong, come out attacking. I think Miami. I was looking at their recent games. They, I was pulling up here. Um, yeah, so what was I going to say? Yeah, so they just came off a win against Clemson 28-20. They're going at NC State after this, which isn't a hard game, but, I could easily see them overlooking this UVA game. And I could see them, thinking, oh, this is an easy one. We got this in the bag. I think 18 and a half is a lot of points. It's over 17. It's not quite 21, but I think I don't think this game is going to be a blowout. 18 and a half suggests a blowout. So that's what I'm going with UVA there. And then my second pick, and so to be clear, we are recording this on Thursday, October 26th at about 6 o'clock my time, because the game that I'm going to pick kicks off in about an hour. And that is, where is it? I'm going to go Syracuse straight up. Another obvious pick if you know me,
Over Virginia
because
Tech.
over
Yeah.
Virginia Tech. I don't. I think Syracuse is a team that is relatively underrated. Now, I'm not saying that they're a top 25 team, but I am saying that they've lost 3 games. They've lost 3 games to Clemson, UNC, and FSU, all rankable teams, with FSU and UNC probably being top 10, top 15 teams. They've beaten Purdue at Purdue. They've beaten Army. And I think that they are 3-point underdogs. So you can get them at about plus 120 right now. Uh, I think I think there's value there. I think they've got a good shot to go in. They're coming off of a bye, as is Tech. So I think that they have an easy schedule the rest of the way. I think they could reset and show that they're mid upper tier ACC football team. So I'm going to take Syracuse straight up, and then my last pick is going to be different than what you might expect. I'm going to take UNC minus 12 against who they're playing. I forgot to write it down. They are playing Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. I think North Carolina got embarrassed last week. I think Coach Mack's going to get on them and make sure that they don't F this up, this game up at Georgia Tech. I think the offense, defense are all well outpace Georgia Tech's quality. I think they get ahead early, and I think they just destroy them. I don't think they let up at any point. So that's why I take UNC minus 12.
Okay. So you do think that one will be a blowout?
Yes.
I like those picks. I like those picks pretty well. I don't know. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that UNC lost to UVA. I was not surprised that they lost to someone, though. They just, Drake May has not looked the same this year, as sharp or as good as he was last year. And I think that I think it was a matter of time before somebody beat him. I think they will rebound, though. I don't think Georgia Tech is very good. I agree with your take on Syracuse. I think Syracuse is pretty decent. I think they are a team that has lost to some good teams, and they don't get credit for being, a decent team. And I think they'll have a good shot of winning tonight. Virginia, I like the confidence. I like the confidence of that pick.
But doesn't agree with the pick.
I don't know if I disagree. I would have to think about it. Miami wasn't so sharp. Did they lose last week, or did they? I forget.
I think they squeaked one out, if I'm not mistaken.
It was like they were not like impressive though recently.
Yeah, 28-20 at home against Clemson.
That's right. They've been. Oh yeah, I watched that game. It was overtime. Maybe it was the week before when they lost. Because they've lost. Who'd they lose to? Anyway, since they beat Texas A&M. They beat Clemson, which was a good overtime game last week, but they haven't been as impressive since they beat Texas A&M. Okay, my parlay. Let me get my picks pulled up. So the first one, 2 of them are on the board already. I did have KU +9 against OU on my parlay. I kind of think OU is going to win the game, but I think +9 is a big number in Lawrence. KU is a good football team. And I think about a touchdown game, maybe a 3-4 point game is kind of what I'm seeing. OU finds a way to squeak it out, kind of like they did against UCF this past week. They often find a way to win those games, and I think it'll probably be one of those. I think OU wins, but I think KU covers. So Florida is also on there. I think Florida wins. I think Georgia wins, but I think Florida covers. I just think it's closer than 14.5. Might be a 14-point game. Might be a 10-point game. Might be a touchdown game. I don't think it's a game that I don't really think that it's a game that we're going to think Georgia's going to lose at any point in time. But I think it's a game that is fairly close, and Georgia kind of controls, but they only win by a touchdown or 10 points.
Right.
And then the final one I have on there is West Virginia +7 at UCF. This line doesn't make sense to me. Part of me wanted to pick West Virginia straight up, but I'm just going to go with the +7. West Virginia is a good football team. West Virginia was a one-loss football team with their only loss being Penn State, who's was undefeated top 10 team prior to losing to Ohio State this past week. And then they lost on a crazy ending Hail Mary against Houston on the road, which they really should have won that game. And then they lost to Oklahoma State last week. And Oklahoma State, who many alumni like myself thought sucked at the beginning of the year after South Alabama absolutely stomped us at home, appears to be surging and actually pretty good with 3 straight wins against Kansas State, Kansas, and West Virginia, which was the top half of the Big 12 minus OU and Texas. So I think a lot of that for Oklahoma State, give me an excuse to talk about Oklahoma State a little bit, is figuring it out that if you go with one quarterback and hand the ball to your best player, Ollie Gordon, things go a little better than if you try to play three quarterbacks and don't hand the ball to your best player. So I think that's been a development that has made Oklahoma State look light years better. But West Virginia's a really solid team. They're a good team. And UCF, I think UCF is pretty solid. They just played OU close, but they have struggled in the Big 12 so far. They had an enormous lead at Baylor that they gave up and ended up losing that game. They lost at K-State. They lost at OU. They've really, really struggled in their first year in the Big 12. I think they're 0-4 in the Big 12. I'd have to look it up to confirm, but I don't think they've won a Big 12 game yet. And they're playing one of the better teams in the Big 12, top half of the Big 12, coming off of 2 losses where they're going to be really motivated. Meanwhile, UCF, I feel like, has to be kind of wondering what they got themselves into at the moment. And especially like last week, giving OU everything they could take in Norman, but losing, sometimes those games just like kill you psychologically because you get so close to a big win and then you don't. Like, I really just think West Virginia is a better team on a neutral field. I don't think UCF has a home field advantage that makes a 7-point difference. And I think that West Virginia we know we're good, but we had some things drop. Now we're motivated, and UCF is probably more in the demoralized state. So I really I'm about to talk myself into West Virginia winning the game, but I'm just going to keep West Virginia at +7 for the sake of the parlay.
Yeah. UCF is 0-4. Lost at Kansas State, home to Baylor, at Kansas, at OU. And the OU loss came off after a bye week, which I think could also further demoralize you.
Yeah. And in fairness, except for Baylor, those are 3 of the better schools in the Big 12. Yeah. But Baylor is not. And you had them down by like 25 at home and let them come back and beat you. That probably was where demoralization started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I think that makes sense.
Baylor is surging a little bit. If I'm going to give my Cowboys credit, I have to give Baylor credit. They've looked a lot better. Same with Iowa State. A couple of teams that looked pitiful at the beginning of the year, but have started to emerge a little bit.
All right. Well, those are our picks. You can see them on the board there. Hold us accountable to them next week. See how well it goes.
All right. We appreciate you. If you made it this far, God bless you. We appreciate you listening. We're going to continue to do this. If there's anything specific you'd like us to talk about, or if there's anything specific you'd like us to pick besides college football games, like our top 5 bourbons or top 5 beers, whatever, we're going to try to do something fun like that at the end of each episode. People may not care for that or even watch that part once they get past the business content. That's fine. It's just kind of fun for us to do. But we're going to keep talking about things that are happening in the world and how it's relevant to small businesses. And if you like what we do, hit the subscribe button and we'll continue providing that to you. But we appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.